Welcome to today's pandemic reflection. Hi, I am Elysium and welcome to my channel. And I'm joined today by Kira Roberts. Now, I'm really excited because we've literally only just met seconds ago, and yet I think that this is going to be a fantastic interview. Kira, welcome to the channel. How are you?
Thank you for your warm welcome. And I am really well. And it just feels like, and maybe this will come out in our conversation, it feels like this is just a natural rhythm. And so I feel really fortunate to be in conversation with you on this day, just because it feels really in alignment. Yeah. So thank you.
Well, thank you as well. I'm feeling that too. And we should thank Reshma as well for introducing us, because she is a good friend of yours on Twitter. That's right, isn't it?
It is. And I feel like when you say her name, it's like, oh, like I have a little warmth in my heart. But I've never met her in ordinary reality. And it's just another little kind of kindred spirit on Twitter. I think we kind of connected over a love of 90s hip hop. I think there's stuff around and De La Soul, like, yeah, 3 is the magic number. Saturday, it's a Saturday. And that was it. The love affair began.
I should have been in that chat. Awesome. Very, very cool.
Next time.
Brilliant. Okay, so how about we're here to talk about pandemic reflections. We are past the 2-year anniversary of everything going a little bit weird. And yeah, I think that this chat might go in some interesting directions. So how has it been for you on a personal and professional level? And feel free to go in any direction that you want.
Yeah, and thanks for that open question, because, you know, we could have this conversation tomorrow and be totally different. And that's such as life, isn't it? The rivers and streams and all the ways that we can flow or hit resistance. So for me, March 2020, I was probably about 5 months post my second kidney transplant. And, you know, people don't need to have awareness around these things unless it's relevant to them. But just to kind of give a little bit of background, I've had kidney issues since I was 4 years old, and, you know, involved a number of years on dialysis, teenage life, and then a little bit later in adulthood life after my first kidney transplant failed. And then the gift of the second kidney came in October 2019. And the first 12 months is very, very nuanced, a close eye is kept. And so it just kind of gives that as a marker of the entry point of where I was a little bit in my life when the lockdown happened. But, you know, reflections on pandemic, that's what you're doing here. And that's, as I know, you know, in all the different conversations, there's so much nuance and complexity and layers. And that for me, I kind of, in some strange way, I had a feeling that something like this was coming. It wasn't a surprise. So it's that we have such a capacity to be in tune. And it's not that, you know, I mess up and make mistakes all the time. So it's just, oh, yeah, no surprises really, because the way we kind of can live very punishing lives and forget what the really important things are. And the journey with my kidneys has been a very potent reminder and companion to keep remembering the things that are important. So I pivoted online very quickly. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a naturopathic nutritional therapist. I'm a writer. So it was actually kind of a joy, because I was finding, going back into the city, one of the law firms I work with is across London Bridge. And, you know, people who are Londoners will understand that. If you're not in London, just this peak time traveling across the bridge with sea of people and everybody's nervous system being in a certain way. I was not sad to not have to be doing that. And I actually really loved taking things online from a community class that I run, which kind of morphed from a social prescribing yoga class to I kind of, the funding got cut for that. And that has become, so I keep bringing it back to pandemic reflections. I think for me, these past 2 years have been extraordinary in helping me grow and dismantle all of my own BS, to be quite honest, and to heal. Like, healing happens in a spiral. It's always continuing in ways that we sometimes can't imagine.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So I agree with you. Healing does happen in a spiral. And for me, so does growth, and the kind of growth that you're talking about on a personal level. Um, Fascinating that you came into the pandemic after having such an enormous change in your personal life, and a big operation like that. I kind of get the sense, thank goodness it happened before everything started to, rather than afterwards.
Yeah,
That
sure.
would have been a completely different story. I know that, for example, hospitals were stopping people coming to visit, and things really, really tightened up, especially at the beginning, when the feeling was mainly an overriding sense of fear over what this actually meant.
Yeah, so many layers. And I suppose for me, because of my interest in health and a truly integrative approach, that it was sort of like, oh, this is so interesting that I'm still, because I was still having to go to the hospital regularly for checks, because it's still early days. And then I developed a different virus called CMV, which came from the kidney about 9 or 10 months in, which was really difficult because it looked like the kidney was spiraling in a way that was looking incredibly terrifying. And that was another invitation to, oh, I thought I was doing well. It's like, no, you still got more BS to unpick. And so, of course, I don't say these things lightly, and I I'm in a really good place at the moment, so I'm able to speak without charge. But I just say that so for people listening, that I know it's really tough to go through these experiences and to integrate our wounds and hopefully in some way spin and weave them into wisdom. And that's very nuanced, that what I offer in the world is very different to what somebody else is going to offer in the world. And that's the way of things. That's right. That's where we get diversity and richness and the alchemical broth that we can sprinkle new ingredients in all the time. But yeah, you're right. But life went on in hospitals, right? Nobody was running around paranoid. Everybody was incredibly kind and professional. And that I'm part of that team. Me as a patient, I'm part of the team. And we have to keep remembering that. That it's very disempowering if we think that life is happening to us. It's life is happening as us. It's happening as we are. Yeah, so vast.
I would totally agree with that. And yet you're right, life did go on in hospitals, and as it did outside, but in a different way. And I'm glad that the changes that you made were actually a blessing. I think that you're kind of feeling that.
So really.
Yeah, definitely. I think, in some senses, I think maybe hospitals having to cancel a lot of operations, that could have had a very different outcome.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm so glad that you managed to still feel that you were being supported in the right way through that experience. And also, well done for getting over that awful infection that cropped up. That must have been a very frightening time, but you did it. You overcame it.
Well, this is it. And it's like, we can never assume what somebody's experience is, because it went on for months. I was constantly at the hospital. So the thing, having a transplant is, and I'm not, again, this is for me, I don't want to take on the label of being clinically vulnerable, because I was still carrying on doing the work that I wanted to do. And I suppose this is where I talk about dismantling my BS, like to go into a little bit more detail of what that means for me, that what is it to get out of our own way. And I took on way too much. It was ridiculous when I look back and I think, what was I doing when I needed that energy for my healing? That I was getting involved in very big projects that both had a medical slant to them. And the irony of like having to stand my own ground in a clinical environment, because I'm very au fait with what works for me, and I'm very clear in being able to relay that, which is not easy when you're also like stressed and anxious about what are the results going to be now.
Of course.
And then on the other hand, having to be all singing, all dancing, Kira, hey, can you speak on this panel? Hey, can you come do a presentation at an international medical conference? And I'm like, what am I doing? But it wasn't a simple, one day I was doing that, and then it was like this whole, I had to set my own nervous system on fire to realize that I had to, not do that anymore. And that was difficult.
No, I totally get it. Do you think part of that wanting to do stuff, I don't know you very well, and so I'm only wondering, was it you kind of saying, right, this is me, I can cope with this? Or was it more of a distraction technique, or was it a bit of both, or have you not considered?
Yeah, the reflections, Elizabeth. The reflections have been deep. And yeah, it's I don't, I'm going to say I don't think it was a distraction, but that might be something. I think it was an invitation for me to really see what I have to offer in the world and really shine it out, because I don't need to be a nephrologist. I'm not a kidney doctor. I don't need to I'm as smart as you. I don't need to do any of that nonsense. It's ridiculous. I have other things to offer in different ways. And to kind of find that I am very, very, I know I'm here to, one of my kind of key messages, I suppose, is awakening your inner physician. That what is it to awaken to our own strengths, and that means getting out of our own way. And in case this is interesting, because I think you might like this based on some of the other people that you've been talking with. I kind of embarked on this goddess initiation exploration with actually with the wife of one of my amazing teachers. He's called Don Oscar Miro Quesada, and he's a Peruvian curandero, and I'm very fascinated by that lineage. And his wife, Cindy, who has been in the years that I've been working with Don Oscar, kind of learning the tradition, that she's kind of been in the background. And that's probably not even a fair way of saying it. Of course, she was supporting him in huge ways and doing her own work in huge ways. But she announced this goddess initiation, this 9-month program of what, kind of journeying to go and meet your own goddesses, which is basically kind of another way of journeying into the many layers of self that there are. And it started in March 2021. So it's pretty much a year ago. So we had our 9-month completion in November. And the goddesses that came in were invited to meet 7. And it was done in a very sacred, well-held way. That this isn't kind of, it's very autonomous. I love teachers who allow autonomy in who they're sharing with, that they're not sitting there going, this is how you do it. It's like, hey, this was my journey and I have to share it because it was awesome for me. How was it for you? And that was incredible. And one of the goddesses that kind of spoke to me, she came in as a red kite, and this image of a red kite. And I came to know her more as Inanna. So this ancient Sumerian goddess, Inanna, I'm not sure if you've heard of her at all.
No.
Yeah, but I found her myth. It was like, I know this myth. Did I write it 4,000 years ago on the ancient Sumerian clay tablets? Or there's something that pulses because it was written 4,000 years ago on clay tablets in ancient Sumerian.
Wow.
And her myth is essentially she traveled, she has a beautiful life, and then she has to go through these various initiations to go and meet her sister Ereshkigal in the underworld, and she is stripped of all her adornments, everything.
I do know her, and she comes back, and as she does, she gets them back, and the final layer is she gets her jewelry back.
She gets everything back and she reclaims herself. And it's the Inanna and Ereshkigal. It's the same. We are the light and we are the dark. And so I felt like that's the best way I can describe it without kind of going into psychologizing it. I find myth and stories so helpful because there's part of the story where she gets down into the underworld and her sister completely betrays her, and she's hung on a meat hook. Her naked body hung on and I'm like, I know what it feels like to hang myself on a meat hook. And I don't think I'm alone in that. In fact, I know I'm not, because it's a common thing in the dark night of the soul, or break down to break through, however you want to phrase it and how it resonates. But I found that incredible. And to share that with others. I did an event to share it and read it, and it was it landed so beautifully with people. So she speaks to me a lot.
That's so funny, because when you first said her name, I was like, I don't think I do. And then when you started talking about her, I remembered. Now, the reason that I came across her was in the January of last year. Okay. The second lockdown in the UK, and it was the bleak lockdown. And it was just so awful. And I remember going through this period of real darkness. I was just inconsolably depressed, and that's not a normal state for me. And so I was trying to find a way to kind of pull myself out of the gloom. And I reached out to a therapist that I know who she concentrates on craniosacral therapy, which is fantastic. And I had some amazing sessions with her. And I was kind of saying, I know I can't see you at the moment, but, I really don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. And she sent me the story of Inanna. And and it was just phenomenal to kind of, to connect with, like you say, this ancient Sumerian myth, and relate that to your own life. And it is like the layers that you go through, and it's not just once, right?
Oh my gosh, that's the thing. You're like, hey, I'm doing pretty well. Oh yeah. God, I didn't see that. And it's an invitation, isn't it? And it doesn't mean it feels good. I and thank you for sharing that. I love that she has come up in your life as well, and that she was sent to you as a little bit of solace. But yeah, I remember just like standing where I'm sitting now. I look out at our communal gardens, and it's very beautiful. I'm very lucky to live in a lot of green in Crystal Palace in London, but just like crying, and just, I'm creating all of this. I need to stop, like, because I'd gone through the somatic experience of losing a first kidney transplant, and then thinking, oh no, and then being devastated that I'm gonna create the same outcome. It's our samskara, or our karmic scarring, or again, whatever vernacular, whatever language is helpful to we underestimate what strength we have access to, and we all have access to it. And that's what excites me, to plant a moon drop on somebody else's tongue.
That's so beautiful. I knew that this was going to be a really special interview. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so how did your professional life, because often there's a mirror between the personal and the professional.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you've already mentioned you were doing yoga classes online, and you were working for a law firm as well, and everything started to happen online, and that can be a blessing. How did your professional life fare during such a turbulent time, not just in the outside world, but also in the inside world?
Well, this is kind of the amazing thing, that I had. The past 2 years have been my best financial years in my 10 years of running my own business, which is kind of crazy on many levels. When I kind of consider, again, it comes back to this strength of the human spirit, and I could never have anticipated that would have been the outcome. And honestly, after I had my second kidney transplant, or when I came out of hospital 10 months later after the viral situation with the CMV, I always give myself permission to take as long as you need, like take as long as you need. But inevitably I'll find, like, actually I'm doing pretty well, and I'll pick things back up again. And I think part of coming online for me, like when you talk about how they mirror, that they absolutely interweave and interplay, and who I am is what the work is in the world. And that's very nuanced, because I run my own business, and I appreciate it's totally different. I've worked in banking for a long time before this, and I have reflected on, I wonder how I would have fared if I was working in that environment and this happens. I do wonder. And it's I think it would have been a lot harder, to be honest. But I've kind of really become, or I'm becoming, more of the teacher I want to be, or the human I want to be. And that has been that's been a gift of Inanna, and going into the underworld and all of that, to rise anew with renewed vigor, as my mum would say. She says it's a renewed vigor, and to share that from that place, because I've been very angry about how the medical system operates, the biomedical model. That, yes, of course, it's wonderful in an emergency situation, and it would be ridiculous for me to decry it, because I've relied on dialysis machines for numbers of years. I've had 2 kidney transplants, so it's this integrated approach means that we show up in the best way we can, and we do the best with the cards we're dealt. And that's not meant to be, I got a poor set of cards. It's like, well, what are the cards? What are the cards? And they might change, and they might morph into different things. But yeah, I've kind of, had this inspiration then to start writing my second book. and just getting a lot clearer and being a lot clearer about, I don't need to hammer on closed doors. I don't need to do that to myself. And I still want to make it, I do want to be a change maker in mainstream medicine, but I need to do it as me. I don't need to do it as anybody else, or to put an expectation that, oh, I need to show up like this. And that's subtle. It's like to your mirror, you know, who are the honest mirrors we have in our lives? And because everything is a mirror ultimately, isn't it? It's this, oh, okay, why did that happen? What is it mirroring to me? Rather than, oh, that person was an a-hole, and you know, it's and again, this isn't always easy because we go into our reactivity responses. So it's learning to be more conscious, and that's a practice. That's a daily practice. So yeah, I think I've probably gone off on a massive tangent there.
But great tangents. Now, you've just mentioned, and you mentioned before, your interest in natural medicine, and how is that part of your, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So I worked in banking for a long time, and because I've had kidney issues from a very young child, I've kind of integrated, or you know how psychology might phrase it, as I'm a rapid processor, if you like, because you know I would call it more shape-shifting. We have capacity to adapt, but what is our capacity in our nervous system? So the integrated approach would be a natural medicine. People might hear that and then think, oh, you know, it's all woo-woo. That's not, it's the integrated model is everything. It's like sometimes we need the life-saving antibiotics. I know I've certainly benefited from that. Sometimes we need the very skilled, incredible surgeon who is not going to perhaps engage emotionally, but we trust that they're going to do a fantastic job. So it's again, it comes back, how do we play to our strengths? We do that in many different ways. But I do get invited quite a lot to speak on panels, or, you know, and then that's for me to like, well, maybe I need to start discerning a bit more, because I do it all for free. That's all for free. And I actually have, I suppose with my nutritional therapy background, I studied at the College of Naturopathic Medicine in London, and it was a 3-year course. So we learn a lot about anatomy and physiology and yoga. So it's kind of going into that, understanding what is it to have, and all of these kind of phrases are used a lot in medicine, and I don't know how useful they are, because we might be using these phrases, but they're not soaking through into the culture of, you know, holistic and to have humanity in everything that we do, really, humanity and reverence. And that is not always easy when there's a lot of enculturation and hierarchy in systems.
I would agree with you. And this is fascinating. I've got a video coming up this week about being a biohacker and what that means, because I really love that phrase. Now, I'm not claiming to be an expert. I certainly haven't done that course. It sounds amazing. But for me personally, I'm really interested in how we can be responsible for our own well-being. And I think really, in my opinion, we all have the duty to be responsible for our own well-being. Obviously, living in the UK, we're very lucky to have a national health service. But the downside is that sometimes it takes away that responsibility of people to take good care of themselves first, because, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just go and get it fixed. And yeah, I mean, I don't mean to sound judgmental in the way that people live their lives. I'm just saying that it's important to look after yourself, because really, at the end of the day, you know, if everything falls apart, then this is all we've got. We need to know how to take good care of ourselves.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you know, no need to be apologetic in saying any of that in any kind of way, because it's and there might be connotations that if we say you need to take responsibility, you might have grown up in a household saying you need to take responsibility, and then there's a quirk in the nervous system that, oh, that's, you know, I'm being blamed or whatever. It's very nuanced, but it's also very empowering. And the biomedical model can be very disempowering, because the reality is that they're constrained, and it's like time, like and by the time you say it, you've said I don't have time. You could have said, hey, you know, it's again patterns. And I've really chose to, which is no easy task, because it's a lot of my wounds are in that, to lift up the blanket of the NHS, and there are incredible people that work in the system. It's like any system, you know, the yoga world, you get crazy people working there as well as brilliant people. It happens in every industry. But I just, to be curious, if I am going to be a change maker, and I need to understand it, and yes, I've kind of grown up in it. I've been in it since a very young, you know, we came back from Zambia when I was probably about 12 or 13. And so I've been in the NHS since then, and kind of the Western model is quite brutal. It's very different to how I was cared for in South Africa, and how I just had such a relationship with the land in Zambia, because it's a much deeper symbiosis. And so, like a plant, you know, I grew really healthy. I wasn't, oh God, it didn't even occur to me that I had this kidney condition. It wasn't, and that's thanks to my parents as well. So I kind of grew up knowing that, well, life is beautiful, and it doesn't mean it was easy. I've gone into very dark places, but that's part of being human. And we don't, I suppose we pathologize way too much. And there's like, oh, I've got this, I want a pill for it. And it's like our healing can't work. It might work temporarily, but it's where is the invitation to feel? And what I'm learning about more, and that yes, nutrition is very, very important. And I've been running my own clinical practice around that for 10 years now. And I learn something new from every person that comes to see me. And it's often the small changes, that change happens in increments. And sometimes it's very, very small changes, that it's not about give up gluten, sugar, red meat, do it, dairy. If you tell somebody, if they're stressed out of their mind, I work with a lot of, you know, I don't know, lawyers, medics, CEOs, if we even want to frame it that way. They just happen to be the people that come and see me, that they're not, that you're going to like completely freak them out if you say cut out all of these things. If they come to you and say, this is what I really want to do, that's different. And I've done those things in a way that it's much more than I'm doing it as a whole cleanse. That where are my triggers? Where are my stimulants? What am I relying on? And I'm doing it when I feel like it's right for me to do it now. I'm not doing it in January in the depth of winter when everything's so bleak, and then, you know, everyone's having a meltdown because they're not having their coffee. I love my morning coffee. So it's very nuanced. And it's interesting about the biohacker, because that's quite a masculine approach, but it can be effective. Again, it's kind of finding the things that are resonant. Women's bodies are very different to men's bodies, and that is not taken into account enough in mainstream medicine.
Yeah, that's so true. I like the phrase biohacker because it's quite now, so that's one thing that's good, and it also kind of suggests that I suppose that you've got this ability to reprogram, to get into the depths of the coding. And I love that as an image. I know what you mean about it sounding a bit masculine. And for me, also, I have been through that process of eliminating exactly those things on your list. And I got to a point where I am able to tolerate a lot of those things and reintroduce them back into my diet. But it's only through abstinence for a certain amount of time, and then the process of understanding why it was dangerous and causing symptoms, and then really getting to the crux of the matter and trying to fix that before they can come back into my life. And it was such a worthwhile thing to do, but a very long-term project and a very personal project as well. It is hard work. And one of the hard things about it is when you kind of speak to someone and you're kind of like, okay, so I've given up dairy now, and they're like, oh. And then you become a vegan and they're like, oh.
I get it. I totally understand. And that's why it's kind of like blaze your own trail. And it sounds like you've done exactly that. And I commend you, because let me give you an example. I think when we have an instinct or a draw to do something and the mind is on board, that yes, we'll meet struggle in it, but we're willing to commit to it and stick with it. So I just had a very clear message, not that I'm a big boozer at all. I don't have the capacity for it, but, you know, I do enjoy a glass of wine or a gin and tonic when I'm watching the sunset with friends. And when I had my second kidney transplant, I was just, and this was not a mental, oh, I must do this. It was just, I'm not going to drink for a year. it was just a happening. It was a sensing and feeling. And I didn't. And it was, apart from I had a glass of champagne to celebrate my parents' 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, lovely.
Which was such a gift. Imagine being able to celebrate with your own parents their 50-year marriage. But yeah, I think, and that was the right time to do it. It felt good. So to trust yourself and read the signs and signals from your body.
That's so lovely. I had the same thing. There's so many similarities here that I gave up alcohol for a year as well. And it was, I was going out for my birthday. Okay. And I said to my friends, let's go to this new cocktail bar. They do mocktails. I'll drive. And then they kind of got together and went, we can't let her drive. And that was it then. Someone else was driving and it was, okay, go on then. And wow. It was jumping in at the deep end.
Wow. And how did you feel?
I was amazing. It was such a great night. But it was one of those funny times. I mean, I didn't drink a lot either. But it was one of those nights when I drank a few drinks and felt incredibly sober. I don't know whether that was...
Wow.
Yeah, it was weird. And it had been such a long time. Maybe it was just such a shock to the system, or maybe I had an incredibly effective liver at that point because it had been so purified. Who knows? But yeah, it was a lovely night. It was good. So yeah, I've been back there since. It's a fun place.
Yeah, and it's balance, isn't it? It's just that I had the great gift of a friend of mine. She's been kind of studying various Shakespeare plays. One of the things that she did in the past couple of years, she's an osteopath, and her and I kind of do various bits and pieces together. Mostly we just have a lovely friendship. But yeah, she was saying off the back of that she went to see Hamlet at the Young Vic here in London. And it was when Cush Jumbo was playing it. So Cush Jumbo is a female actor. And so she was playing Hamlet, and it was, but she was playing it as a man. And so Julia described it as like, I need to go and see this. So I took myself off to go and see it. And it made me recognize that so many of the lines that certainly I know, that we hear the great bard is quoted a lot in many places. Shakespeare is a highly quoted human being. But one of the ones that stood out, like nothing is good, and I might be paraphrasing it slightly, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And that is from Hamlet. And it's like we have, and it ties in a lot with the tantric philosophy. I find the tantric philosophy incredibly beautiful, it's the non-duality of, we are so quick to judge, and it's like nothing is good or bad. It just is what it is. Frame it as that person's an a-hole, that person's amazing, and then I'm not good enough. This is the pervasive illness, if that's even the right word. I'm not enough, I'm inadequate, and that acts out in so many ways. If we keep remembering nothing is good or bad, it just is. It's a daily practice. Of course, because it comes with there's so much conditioning. I
tell you what, you wouldn't have this outlook on life and this philosophy and depth of wisdom, I think, if you hadn't experienced the things that you have.
No way. And that's why I say, and it's on my Twitter profile, my kidneys, my wisest teachers, because I'm not interested in another narrative. For me, it's not helpful. And I did kind of work for about 18 months with a project called Kidney Beam. That was one of the projects that I took on at a time where I had a lot going on. But it was, I did a weekly live yoga class online with people impacted by kidney illness, and that presents in many, many different ways. And because I've lived through all the different ways, I'm able to, this is about holding safe space for people to feel their feelings. It's not about me telling them what to do. It's about, listen, we can all breathe. Like, the power to self-regulate is incredible through the breath, and that is universal, and it's free. So talk about biohacking. It's like we can change our chemistry with 3 deep breaths, change our life with our breath.
I'm an everyday breather.
Everyday breather. I love that. That's a great quote. Hey, I'm an everyday breather. I love that. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah. So important though, isn't it? You'll know that.
Really is. Yeah, I start my day with a different breath routine. I'm learning the Botego method at the moment, and I
Yeah.
find it really fascinating, and how it can be used to increase not just your sports performance, but enhance your performance in life. So yeah, I'm doing Botego practices throughout the day to try and. So yes, I'm with you.
That's amazing. And I wonder if you, it was quite interesting that it came out. So James Nestor is a science journalist and he wrote Breath. You probably know it.
Book. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of put it much more, it is Breath is very much in the zeitgeist. But it always has been in the perennial wisdoms. And that's what I keep reminding myself, that this is what happens when it gets into mainstream medicine. They think that they've just come up with this new idea.
Exactly. Look at what we found.
No, it's like this has been known. If you look at the ancient texts, it's written in a different way, but it was already known and experienced.
I got into breathing. I'm not sure how I started, but I know that I started finding videos on YouTube, and that was amazing. There was just so much there. So I made my playlist and then practiced doing different ones, and just found what had the desired effect. Really, it's phenomenal, the power of breath.
Oh my gosh, it's extraordinary. I love, you're such a curious soul as well. You've kind of done it. So that's why it's, let's try this, let's try that. And then finding what suits you, and that it changes, and it's okay for it to change as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, we could keep on talking forever.
We could go all the way with Inanna and through her 7 stages of tripping. Yeah.
Don't joke. That's why I wear earrings now. That's my kind of, I come out the other side, and I know that I'll be back in there soon, but
it might feel a bit easier. And it does, in my experience, again, I can only speak from my own experience, but I had what I can only describe as a 6-hour psychotic episode. And it's 6 hours specifically because that was the length of time you have to lie still after having a kidney biopsy. Ooh. And I wasn't anticipating this. It was already the whole lot of stress and the lead up to it. And I had a dream. I ended up having it as an inpatient. It's normally done as an outpatient thing. So I was in, kind of, now I can say it, I was incredibly stressed. At the time I would have said, no, it's fine, I'm not stressed at all. I can handle this. What's the problem? Where of course my blood pressure was like, well, your blood pressure is very high. It's fine, I'll do some breathing. And then the breathing wasn't working. Like I was too far gone. But I'd had a dream the night before the procedure when I'd come in as an inpatient, and it was this crazy dream that it was kind of that liminality of, you got to let go of everything, like everything. And then I think that was probably Inanna starting to come in. It was kind of only months later that I properly connected with her myth. But that is like, it wasn't lost on me, the absolute irony. And thank God I'm able to embody these things. That it came on as soon as the tissue sample had been taken, and then I'm left alone on in the room, and like, oh my God, I just felt this thing descend upon me. And it was like Edward Munch, the scream. My whole jaw seized up, and I was hanging on to the rails of the side of the bed. It was like that. And I'm like, wow. But it just went on, and I kept, okay, breathe, like every millisecond, breathe. It makes for such a funny story. And I'm not underplaying that it was quite an interesting episode, but it was, I was trying to explain to the nurse, and because I was presenting as very calm, because I'm able to like, okay, I seem to be having some sort of psychotic episode, and my jaw is like driving me, it's so painful. And so I said to the nurse, she was quite young, I said, I don't know really how to describe it, but I think I'm having some sort of psychotic episode, and I have a really sore jaw. And so she was just like, oh, okay, let me just go and chat to the doctor. I could hear her say, and then she came back in with 2 paracetamol. My God. And I just had to say to her, it's really not going to touch the sides. And I thought, I think it would be more stress for me to try and explain, because it was so nuanced, and it was so like, I'd probably go into ego of, I'm able to manage this. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have to just sit this one out. And I was vomited a couple of hours later then. And it was incredible. It was a fascinating experience.
It sounds like you were birthing your new self in a way.
I think so. I love that you phrase it like that. But it's interesting to me how do I share something like that? And it is like comedy and tragedy are they're the same coin, 2 sides of the same coin, and that it's very important for me that I'm able to see the humor in these situations, and not to distract, but it's like, it is actually quite funny, because part of me is like, I'm Kira Roberts, yoga teacher. I don't take drugs. Where all I probably wants to do was like, give me the oxycodone. And then all of this that was playing up, like, oh, you know that Kira Roberts, she takes like quite hard drugs. And it's just all of the nonsense that starts to play around. And it's just the stories that spit and spit.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a very interesting experience. And yeah, disentangling that in the months following that. Oh, okay. Because then I was just carrying on. Yeah, I could do that. And then my nervous system was like, hello.
Oh, goodness me.
Yeah.
I tell you what, you have earned yourself a lot of badges. Like, seriously, I'm very, very, very impressed. Like, genuinely amazing to meet you and to talk about all of this stuff. I am so incredibly just wowed. I'm so grateful that you have shared your story with me. So many parts of it touched me deeply. That's what I wanted to say.
And I knew that I was going to, because it's kind of, and you're not going to know this, it's kind of only in recent weeks that I'm like, I really want to show up as me. And I had that feeling that, and because we're together, it doesn't matter that there's a screen there, and it's just, so thank you, thank you for being amazing, and like, hey, yeah, that's, oh wow, that's that you're able to receive it, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
You are completely fascinating and enchanting. So where can people get more of you? Can I share links to your website, to your work?
I would love that. I think the best place to find out more is, I do love Twitter. I think I've had the very fortunate experience of just having, I come across lovely people like Reshma and now you, and there's plenty of other examples of how things have happened on there. And I think Twitter is the bird, the winged ones, the higher realms, and that, we don't need to get involved or embroiled. So Twitter is at Wholly Aligned, and my website is whollyaligned.com. So if I give the origin of how that came about, then it will be clear in perhaps how it's spelt. I was talking with my friend Cheryl about words we loved, and I was saying, oh, I love the word alignment, and she was saying, oh, wholesome, and yeah, and then I was like, oh, wholesome alignment, wholly aligned, and there it was born. So it's the WHOLLY, whollyaligned.com.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Excellent. Well, I will pop those links down in the pinned comments and in the description below. And I would like to thank you once again for joining me. If you want to get in touch with either of us, please check down below. And I think that there is just enough time for me to thank you for liking, subscribing, and putting the alert notification on so that you never miss an episode. And don't forget, if you like this channel, don't tell me, tell your friends. I'll see you next time.